So a comment was made on yesterday's video that a lot of you thumbed up. Diamond Dis2 says, I find the fact that the words too old even came up disgusting. You have a higher up who is uncomfortable giving orders to an individual older than them. You need a better higher up. Older people being dismissed because of some insecurity on part of a more senior staff member is pathetic and unfair. Let's talk about that. Welcome back, XDA crowd. Today I am going to riff. I am going to just forgo the planned video interview that we had and just answer some of the questions that were put in the comments below. Some people said, you know, basically the advice of this interview is don't get old. Great advice. Well, that was not the advice. That really was not the advice at all. But I understand why people are upset or concerned about it. My plan here, my hope in doing these interviews was to provide you information that is really hard to get elsewhere. There's a reality that recruiters and hiring managers will say a certain amount of things on camera and a certain amount of things off camera. And I'm trying to share with those things with you off camera as much as I can and still be diplomatic about it. Meaning I can't tell you who said what or what employer said what, but I can tell you some things that are a reality, okay? I do not believe that, and again, I'm riffing here. There's no script here. I'm just riffing, okay? I do not believe that the IT industry or the hiring industry in general is just replete with discrimination, whether it's ageism, racism, or sexism. Although it happens, it's out there, right? What I think is that there is a systemic problem. Okay, you have recruiters and hiring managers who have to take hundreds of applications for one spot and submit 3 to 4 candidates just after a few days of a selection process. If the position is for an executive position where there's hundreds of thousands of dollars in salary, it's different. They have weeks, maybe months of this process to go through. And that doesn't really apply to this, but it applies to the entry level and middle manager positions, okay? So let's say they have 200 applications for one spot. Over a few days, the recruiter or hiring manager has to pare that down to 15, 20 max because they can't afford the time to do phone screenings for 50 people. More realistically, they're paring it down to 10 or 12, okay? And so how do they make that jump? Because that's a huge jump. I would like to say that the process they go through is fair and sound, but it's not. It's subjective, okay? So see, these are some of the darker, less spoken about aspects of how they get from 200 to 10. One, a lot of North American big companies, and again, we're not talking young tech startups here, we're talking about traditional corporations. Often they will say outright, or they'll just reject applications from people who are not educated in North America. I know, you're freaking out, but it's reality. Now, for people from India and China, I know I have a big audience on my channel from India. You guys are great, I love you, and it doesn't mean that you can't get hired in North America. It just means you need to understand that hurdle, and we can talk about that in more detail. But that's a factor, okay? Even more controversial is a lot of people are eliminated because of their name. If the name is considered really hard to pronounce or super foreign or super difficult, it may be just eliminated from the pile, okay? Now you're thinking, my goodness, that is horrible. That's not necessarily because the hiring manager is a bad person. It's because they know that they get paid by a client. And if the client has, in the past year of their contract, has been rejecting these types of people, they're not going to waste their time submitting people that they're not going to get paid for. Okay? That's a reality. It is not every time, but it is a factor. So, what does this mean for you? How do you deal with this? Because I'm trying to help you. Here's the thing. If you have, let's say you're from India, you were educated in India, and we know, I used to teach in India. I know their education system is better than ours. They're freaking awesome. But if you are an Indian and you're applying here, and you've never worked here, you didn't go to high school here, you have no education here. But, for example, you've worked with people in Western Europe, or you've worked with people who are from North America, or who are anglicized, for example. You want to talk about that. You want to feature that project. You want to use them as a reference kind of thing. This is the kind of thing that helps mitigate that unfairness, okay? And it is unfair. There's no other way to put that, all right? So another practical thing that will really help with this is you want to feature items and aspects of your education or experience that that employer can't get from another candidate, or it'll be harder to get from another candidate. And you want to put that right up front, because the reality is a recruiter or hiring manager spends about 30 seconds or less on your resume. That's a fact, okay? You need to accept that. So put the most interesting, applicable information right at the top in the highlights and bullet points or in the summary of your resume, because that's where they really go. They're going to slowly start to, after that, they're going to slowly start to scan your work experience, and they're going to look at dates, chronologically, all that kind of stuff. The other thing is, I've heard people suggest that you use action verbs like supervised, organized, established, pioneered, those types of things. But what's more helpful is to give them a measurable outcome. You want to be outcome focused, results focused. So here's an example. So if you were an IT pro or a developer and you worked on a project that helped your client save money, tell me how much money if you can. If you worked on a project that helped build new clients or attract new clients, say which clients they were or how many clients they were. Give us numbers, give us measurable evidence of your performance. Hugely that has a huge impact, because it helps the recruiter or hiring manager remember something tangible that they can give to the client to say, hey, this candidate has this, where other candidates can't. No other candidate, or very few other candidates, are going to say, I built a project that helped bring in X number of dollars or X number of clients. Results focused. All right, let's talk about cultural fit. This has got to be the biggest determining factor in deciding who is hired. It's not as simple as culture like we normally think is culture. Like, there's a startup company that's filled with Indians, so they want to hire other Indians. It's just not that simple. When you talk about cultural fit, there's many different facets to it. So for example, a young startup company is going to want people who are really independent, real go-getters. They don't need a lot of supervision. They can work and do multiple different tasks. They're not necessarily specialists. And culturally, they love to work in a small, free-spirited environment, okay? Whereas in a more traditional corporate culture, you're going to want someone who is, they say, they work well as a team, which may be a little bit of a euphemism for someone who is a good follower, can kind of follow the manual, follow the book. It's a much more traditional approach. And you have to be honest with yourself. What kind of person are you? My wife, for example, she really likes the more traditional corporate kind of thing. Me, I'm the opposite. I'm much more, independent. I want to work on my own and work on my own time. I go through bursts of activity where I'm hugely productive and really focused, and then, go days where I just kind of laze about and play video games all the time. That's part of my culture, but she is totally different. And so when you apply to someplace, know what person you are and what kind of environment that you would excel in, because then you can communicate that in an interview in an honest, authentic way. That's a major part of cultural fit. In an interview a couple months ago, we interviewed the VP of Sales for a cloud computing company at the Microsoft World Partners Conference, and he said something. He said, friends hire friends. We're not necessarily talking about nepotism. What we're talking about is hiring managers or CTOs, recruiters. They hire people that they feel comfortable with, that they want to hang with, that they can have fun with. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to pretend to like the interviewer. It means that you need to know the company that you're applying for. Is this a good fit for you? Lots of people, for example, would love to work for Apple, right? But to be honest, a lot of the people I've interviewed from Apple say that it's a horrible place to work. It's really stressful and anxious. So you got to do your kind of research. What kind of place is this to work for? Am I going to be happy spending 8 to 10 hours a day there, and not just look for the job? I know in this economy that's kind of hard to say, but cultural fit has got to be the biggest factor, because when I have gone to recruiters or hiring managers and asked them, look, why did you not hire this person, or this person? And a lot of the time, almost all the time, they would give some sort of cultural fit reason. So, this person has a lot of young kids and they're not kind of willing to put in the extra hours, or this person is a little bit older and is perceived to be a little bit less flexible, is kind of set in their ways. Now, you may not be happy with that, but that is a reality. It's a major factor. But likewise, it maybe the person is just too young and not experienced enough, or too arrogant, too cocky, and too, all that kind of stuff. So those are serious factors. So again, tailor your resume. Research the company and the interviewer before you actually get there. It will make a world of difference. So, questions below. What I'm going to do is I've interviewed Cecilia again about interview preparation, and I'm going to postpone that for next week. But if you have any specific questions about interview prep, conducting an interview, please put in the comments below. I'll take them very seriously and answer them specifically. Thank you so much. Have a good week, guys.